So this is CPM Precalculus Chapter 1, number 37. So 137. We're asked to find the inverse of each function below. Use correct notation to express your answer. So A, we're given f of x is equal to 3x cubed minus 5. So how did this function get wrapped up? So we start always with y equals x, right? We look here, and what did we do to get this? Well, first, we cubed x. So x cubed. Cubed x. Right? So this is where we start. We cubed x, then what do? We multiply x by 3. Multiply x cubed by 3. So multiply by 3. Finally, we subtract 5. 3x cubed subtract 5. Okay, so this is how we got our function. This is how we wrapped it up. Oops, I forgot to write the minus 5. Okay, then now to unwrap it, remember unwrapping it helps us create our inverse function. So that's our goal, is to find the inverse functions. Remember, it's just like wrapping a present. You have to do everything in the opposite order and the opposite. Okay, so let's look at, now we always start with y is equal to x, but now instead of subtract 5, we want to add 5. So we start here and we just have y is equal to x. Now instead of subtract 5, like I just said, add 5. Okay, multiply by 3. Well, what's the opposite of multiply by 3? Divide by 3, right? The opposite of multiplication is division. So we have copy down what's below, and now we divide it by 3. So we just look here, and we're dividing by 3. Cubed x. So, like I said in class, x cubed, the opposite of cubing is the cube root. So, when we want to do the opposite of cubed, we take the cubed root. So y is equal to, we copy down what's below over 3, and then take the cube root of that. Okay, so this is our final product because we're now back at the beginning. So our inverse function, so remember f of x is what we're given, so our inverse function is going to be f to the minus 1 of x. And that does not mean to the negative 1 power, it's just the inverse is equal to, and then we copy this down there. It's equal to the cube root of x plus 5 over 3. So this is for part A. Okay? So let's go on to continue this problem, and let me move this down. Part B. So we're still finding the inverse. So I'm going to start in blue this time. B, we're given g of x is equal to the square root of 2x plus 4. So when we did this, you can see we have a square root, we have a 2 times x here, and we have a plus 4. So we started with y is equal to x, that's where we start, right? Then what do we do first? Well, we didn't just take the square root, we first multiply by 2. So y is equal to 2x, multiply by 2. Then we added 4, y is equal to 2x plus 4, added 4. And then we take the square root. Y is equal to square root of 2x plus 4. Square root 4. Okay? So that's how we wrapped up our function. Now to find the inverse, remember, is how we unwrap it, and we just do the opposite of each step that we did, starting from the last step. So we start with y is equal to x again. What's the opposite of square root? Well, if you don't remember, how do you get x when you have the square root? Well, you square it. So the opposite of square root, opposite, is just the square. So first you want to say x squared, right? Because we're doing the opposite of the square root. We want to square it. Then instead of add 4, you want to subtract 4. Right? Subtract 4. And instead of multiply by 2, we could divide by 2. So another way you could say this is you multiply by 1/2. So you can either say x squared minus 4 over 2, or you can say 1/2 times x squared minus 4. I just want to make sure everyone can see that either one of those is okay, and they mean the same thing. Now we're back at the start, so that means we're done. Okay? So we finalize our answer. We no longer, it's not going to be the inverse function of f because we look up here as g. So the inverse function of g is going to be x squared minus 4 over 2. Now I'm copying that just from here, but you can copy this one too. And box your answer. Okay, now part C. So this question just has A, B, and C. So let me move down a little bit. So part C, I'm going to just get that much room. I'm going to pick a different color. Part C. C, we're given h of x is equal to 1/2 x squared minus 2. Okay, so when we see this, let's see how we wrapped it up. Okay, but instead of seeing how we wrapped it up, I'm going to do this one a little differently. I'm just going to start and notice what we did to it. Okay, I'm going to look and say, we subtract 2, we multiply by half, and we square it. So which order do we do these things in? I'm going to do them in the wrong order on purpose. Okay, so I'm going to say we always start with y equals x. So let's say I say minus 2 next. Y equals x minus 2. Okay, this is just subtract 2. Okay, what do I say we do next? Whatever I do next, we're going to have a problem. And I'm going to show you why. So let's say I say we squared it next. Y is equal to x minus 2 squared. So this is already wrong, right? We do not want it to look like this. We just want the squared to be over x. And we always have to look at the whole thing before it and then use that in the next statement. So we did, if we get to here, we know we did something wrong. Let's back up. So instead of subtract 2, let's see what, maybe we need to say y is equal to 1/2 of x. Okay, so then we just multiply by 1/2. Okay, the next step, maybe we want to square it. Y is equal to 1/2 x, because we just copy what's above and square that. So again, this is not what we want. We do not want the 1/2 squared, right? We only want the x squared. So this is kind of the idea and the thinking that goes behind like ordering these correctly. So let me erase this. And let's start all over from the beginning. Okay. So first, I'm going to use a different color even. Before we multiply by 2, look at the x, we want to square it. Okay. So this is correct. Square it. And then before we subtract 2, we want to multiply it by 1/2. Multiply by half. And then finally we want to subtract 2. So every time we're copying what's above it exactly and then doing what we say on the right to it, right? So we're copying that down and then subtracting 2. Okay, so this is again how we wrap the function. So how do we unwrap the function is how we find the inverse. So we start with y equals to x. Always start there no matter if we're wrapping or unwrapping. Instead of subtract 2, we do the opposite. We want to add 2. Right? Multiply by 1/2, we can divide by 1/2. Another way you could do the opposite, multiply by 1/2, you could multiply by 2. So either of these means the same thing. Right now it looks different to you, and that's fine, but these are equivalent statements. Okay. Finally, square. What's the opposite of square? Is square root. So x plus 2 over 1/2 square root. Or we could say square root of 2 times x plus 2. Either one is going to be the same and correct. Okay. So finally, our original function was h of x. So we can say h, the inverse of h of x is equal to, now you can pick one of these, it doesn't matter right now. I'm going to just use the one on the right. And that's our answer. Box it, and there we go. Okay, so this ends pre-calculus CPM Precalculus Chapter 1, number 37.